Hey YouTubers, Muskrat Jim here. Well, I'm out to the shelter today to light a fire to commemorate the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation here in Canada. It's September 30th, and as you can see, well, as you may be able to see, the leaves are starting to change. The mornings are cool, but the days are still quite nice. Anyway, why don't you come along? About 150 years ago, the Europeans living in Canada wanted the indigenous people here to become more European in their dress, language, customs, and less like the savages they seemed to be. So the government and several churches conspired to forcibly take the children from their parents and school them in boarding houses far from the contact of their parents and tribes. The native children were forced to dress in European-styled clothing, eat European food. The boys had to cut their hair short, and they were not permitted to speak in their native languages. And they were severely punished for breaking any of the rules imposed on them. Aside from the mental and physical abuse, some survivors talk about being sexually abused as well. Many were beaten to death and secretly buried in the land around their residential schools. This legacy of the residential school system shows you who the real savages were. The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is a day to learn and reflect on the atrocities committed against Canada's Indigenous peoples. It gives them the opportunity to tell their stories, knowing that they will be heard. And it gives the people of European descent here in Canada the opportunity to learn about the atrocities that were hidden for so long. It's also a movement to reduce the prejudice and to build trust between the Indigenous peoples and the European immigrants who came to these shores and settled here. The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is also known as Orange Shirt Day for Every Child Matters, in memory of the children who died in the custody of the people who should have been taking care of them. Dozens of my followers on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and whatever have asked me if I was Native because of the type of videos that I post. Now my mother's mother's mother, so that would be my great-grandmother, or one of my great-grandmothers on my mother's side, her name was Alma Wood, and she was a Native. And her parents were Donat Wood and Anne Robert, or Robert. Now I'm not really sure if Alma Wood was 100% indigenous, but if she was, then my grandmother would have been half, my mother would have been a quarter, and I would have been 1/8. Now if Alma Wood was only half Native, then my grandmother would have been a quarter, my mother would have been an eighth, and then I would have been 1/16, or 6.25%. In any case, Alma Wood died young. She died in her 20s, and my grandmother at the time would have been an infant. And my grandmother, before she took her stroke 35 odd years ago, she used to tell me that she was raised by a squaw. Now, the word squaw is not politically correct these days, but it did mean a Native woman. So what my grandmother was telling me was that she was raised by a Native woman. And I don't know if that would have been a female relative of Alma Wood, or whether that would have been my great-great-grandfather's second wife. I've never seen pictures of Alma Wood, but my grandmother did look quite Native. So, you know, I suspect that she was half Native, because my great-grandfather was not Native. He was French-Canadian. Now, as far as the residential schools are concerned, my grandmother wasn't affected by that, because I don't believe she had any formal education whatsoever. So the residential school system didn't affect my people, my ancestors, not like it did for so many others. Now, whether I consider myself Native, no, I do not. I wasn't raised in that culture. Most of my ancestors, with the exception of Alma Wood's branch, were French Canadians. They were Acadians, and they arrived here in eastern Canada in the middle 1600s. So we're getting pretty close to 400 years now since my people arrived here in Canada. So that's the story of this orange shirt, the truth and reconciliation, and whether I am Native or not. Like so many other white people, I'm horrified at the treatment that the Natives received at the residential schools. So today, September 30th, is really a day to learn about what happened and feel remorse for it. They say if you don't learn history, you're doomed to repeat it. So it's very important that everyone learns what went on in those residential schools, so that it never happens again to anyone. So I think that pretty much wraps up this video. A fire for the day for truth and reconciliation. So until next time, this is Muskrat Jim, signing out. For more muskrat survival videos, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And remember to click the bell to receive notifications of newly uploaded videos on this channel.